The Ambitious Guest. A very, very long time ago, in December, a family gathered around their fireplace in their home. The fire gave the room a golden glow. The parents laughed at what their oldest daughter said. There was a girl who was 17 years old. Her younger brother and sister were only 5 and 6 years old. The grandmother of the family was sitting in the warmest corner of the room knitting. She was very old. Another child, the youngest, smiled at the fire's light from its tiny bed. This family was happy in the worst place in all of New England. Their house was built high up in the White Mountains, where it blows very hard all year. The family lived in a very cold and dangerous place. Their house was on top of a mountain. Sometimes, rocks would roll down the mountainside and wake them up in the middle of the night. On the mountain, there was no one else living close by. But this family never felt alone. They liked being with each other and often had guests over. The road that led from the White Mountains to the St. Lawrence River was close to where they built their house. On their way through the mountains in wagons, people always stopped at the family's door for a drink of water and a chat. People who were walking alone across the mountains would stop at the house to share a hot meal. The wind would get so rough and cold sometimes that these strangers would stay the night with the family. When travelers stopped at their house, the family showed them kindness that money couldn't buy. That December night, the wind blew down the mountain quickly. Before roaring down into the valley, it seemed to stop at their house and knock on the door. For a moment, everyone in the family was quiet. But then they saw that there was really someone at their door. A young man stood in the dark when the oldest girl opened the door. He was given a chair by the fireplace by his old grandmother. The eldest daughter smiled at him in a shy way. The child put out its arms to greet him. "This fire is just what I needed," the boy said. "The wind has been blowing in my face for the last 2 hours." The father took the boy's carry-on bag. The elder asked, "Are you going to Vermont?" "Yes, to Burlington," the traveler said. "I plan to get to the valley tonight. I chose to stop when I saw the light in your window. I'd like to spend some time with you and your fire." As the young man sat down by the fire, he heard what sounded like heavy footsteps outside. Hearing huge steps made it sound like someone was running down the side of the mountain. The dad took a look out the window. "That old mountain has hit us with another rock. He must have been scared that we would forget about him." The boy's father told him, "He shakes his head sometimes, which makes us think he's going to fall on top of us." He smiled and said, "But we're old neighbors. We get along pretty well with each other. Plus, I set up a safe place for us to hide outside in case the mountain falls on top of us during a slide." While the dad talked, the mom made a hot meal for their guest. He talked to the family as if they were his own while he ate. This young man didn't trust people very often. But this evening, something made him tell these simple mountain people his deepest secret. In secret, the young man was driven to do well. He still didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. He did know, though, that he didn't want to be forgotten after he died. He was sure that one day he would become famous and be admired by a huge number of people. "I haven't done anything yet," the young man said. "No one would know anything about me if I disappeared tomorrow. No one would inquire about his identity. Where is he now? But I can't die until I've done what I need to do. Then death should come. I'll have built my monument." The family was moved by the young man's strong feelings. They laughed. "You laugh at me," the young man told the oldest daughter as he took her hand. "You think my ambition is silly." She was very shy, and the shame on her face made it turn pink. "It is better to sit here by the fire," she said quietly, "and be happy, even if nobody thinks of us." Her dad looked into the fire. "I believe that what the young man says makes sense. His words made me think about our lives here. I wish we had a small farm in the valley. A place where we could see the mountains without worrying that they would hit us. All of our neighbors would have looked up to me. I would be happy to die in my bed when I got old. You'd put a stone on my grave to show that I lived a good life." The young man yelled, "You see, a monument is something we all want. Some people only want a gravestone. Some people want to be remembered by everyone. But everyone wants to be remembered after they die." To get rid of the darkness, the young man added more wood to the fire. The flames lit up the little group of people sitting around the fireplace. The father's strong arms and mother's soft smile stood out in the light. It made the proud young man cry, and it made the shy daughter cry. That made the old grandmother feel better. She was still knitting in the corner. It was still moving, but she looked up from her knitting and said, "Old people have secrets, just like young people do." The old woman said that she had sewn her own funeral clothes many years ago. Since her wedding dress, these were the best clothes she had ever made. She said her secret was that she was afraid she wouldn't get to wear her nicest clothes to her funeral. The young man looked into the fire. "It was old and young," he said. "We dream of graves and signs. It makes me wonder how sailors feel when they know they will be buried in the ocean, where no one will ever know their name." The house was shaken by a sound that got louder and louder until it sounded like the ocean. Both young and old gave each other a crazy look. Then they all spoke the same words at once. "That slide! That slide!" They ran out of the house and into the dark to the safe place their dad had built for them to avoid the mountain slide. The whole mountainside crashed down on the house like a waterfall of destruction. However, the earth wave split in half just before it reached the small house and went around it twice. The terrible slide destroyed everything in its path except the small house. The next morning, smoke could be seen coming from the mountain house's chimney. The fire was still going inside. Still, The chairs were set up in a half-circle around the fireplace. The family looked like they had just gone for a walk. Some people thought that there was a stranger with the family that terrible night. However, no one ever found out who the stranger was. No one knows what his name is or how he lives. No one ever found his body.